And we're live, and I should probably do a proper introduction, so let's do it. Hello, guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please do remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I have with me, well, I think Vivek, you're an England fan, and Kash is a fan of cricket, as he likes to say. But we can say for this point, because India won and played good cricket, then he's probably an Indian fan today, I would say. So yeah, we've got Vivek and Kash. How are you both doing?
Yeah, really good, really good.
Very good.
Looking forward to the show.
Vivek was saying to me before that he's looking forward to really ripping into England after some dismal performances. But before we get into the, bashing England, calling Bairstow rubbish, and all this, and saying that his test is over, let's firstly talk about. I mean, India won it 3-1, and I predicted 2-2, I think, beforehand. And I was so hoping, I was like, come on, do something special like Joe Root or Ben Stokes. It wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. But yeah, unfortunately, India just way too strong. We've got some people here as well. Ginger Sports hello. Thank you very much for joining. I mean, guys, I just thought for me, India were just way too strong. And there can't be any excuse about the pitch. The pitch was perfectly fine in this test match. Even in the previous ones, I think I said it before that I think personally, yeah, the pitches might not been great, but it doesn't matter because it's the same for both teams as well. So I think it was more of a test spectacle rather than the result. And India just comprehensively outplayed England throughout this whole series, really. England put on a good performance in the first test match, and then India thought, hold on, we can, why are we giving them something that actually will suit them after Root scored runs in Sri Lanka, and they made it. Well, they've done it so that it suits them, which is the right thing to do as a home nation, which is fine. And England just had no answers, to be honest with you, I thought. What are your guys' initial reactions? I mean, over after day 3, which is not great. It's better than day 2, so at least you got one extra day, but still, it's a pretty poor one. Vivek, just quickly, what did you think of this test match anyway?
I think what the series really showed is England failing to adapt to conditions that sort of India sort of created for them, which is really, really bad because I think, especially with England, I always hear the phrase, go out there and play your natural game. I feel that they've taken a bit too literally this time around, rather than sort of thinking, well, yes, let me play how I naturally play, but let me also adapt to the conditions that, are there. Maybe I should take a few balls to have a look. Maybe I should, just take my time, because it was over in 3 days. And I don't think they really sort of assessed the conditions that well at all during the series. And as you say, it's the same for India. They did pretty okay. It's sort of the conditions they're more used to, but still, they handled it a lot better than we did. So I think sort of thumbs up to India, but England played really, really badly, got to say.
Yeah, they did. They played really, really poorly, I thought, on the whole. And yeah, I mean, from an Indian point of view, though, Kash, it was fantastic. I mean, India put on this really phenomenal display where, to be honest with you, they just looked in control throughout the whole of the test match, I would say. And overall, I mean, Axar Patel has just been a revelation, I think, this test series. I think it was only at the end of the test series, I was looking at it, and he was only 3 behind Ashwin, but I don't think, had he played all the games? I don't think he had. I could be wrong. So, yeah, so considering he'd only played, I think, he's only played 3, I think. He didn't play the first one, wasn't it? So, that's really impressive. If he played the whole series, he probably would have had more. Ashwin got man of the series, which is probably rightly so. But, I mean, how good were India in this test match?
I think, yeah. I mean, those two that you mentioned are the real standouts, actually, Ashwin and Axar, in terms of their accuracy, the variations within that. It was something else, and they were kind of talking about it in terms of Axar Patel, and he's not that young, right? He's 27, right? So he's done his yards. He's done his first class cricket. He's done his IPL. You know, he's played IPL cricket for 8 years, so he's got a lot of experience. And it was very telling that you put him in an international stage a bit later, and he's performing at a really high level, right? So there's no issues really around his action. There's no real issues around his variation. It's just him executing it on fine, friendly pitches. Compare that to Dombes, right? Or to the English setup, where there's nobody else. So they just have to play this young guy, right? They don't have a second, you know, whereas Akshar is never going to get into the team because Jadeja's been there, you know. So for a number of years, or Ashwin's been there for a number of years. So the fact, it was just very telling, that contrast. Yeah, and look, Leach bowled okay. He bowled pretty well, but still his stats don't match up at all. You know, he's going at 18 wickets at 28 runs and over. 28 average, sorry. And the other two are under 20 average. I think Akshar's even at 10. He's 27 wickets at 10.5 average. It's like, it's incredible. Like, forget about how woeful England's batting was, because it was. You still need the incredible bowling to put that pressure on them, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, Akshar Patel was just, as you said, a revelation. I said this one, an average of 10.59, 27 wickets. That is just unbelievable. Jack Leach, I think, and maybe it's a case of looking at it realistically. And I think, you know, going into this, I was of the opinion that, you know, Joe Root, if he scores big runs and England bat well, they've got a chance. But I really should have thought to myself, well, if you look at the difference in the spinners, there's a huge gap there, because even if Moeen Ali is playing, and we know he's done a decent job for England, even then, they have Moeen Ali and Jack Leach. That still pales in comparison to Ashwin and Akshar Patel. The only issue the only thing I would have said beforehand is I don't really know too much about Akshar Patel and how good he's going to perform the test stage. So, but as soon as he played that second test match, I'm thinking, okay, the conditions are helpful for him, but it doesn't matter because he's still utilizing conditions correctly. And as you said, like Bess didn't utilize them correctly. Leach did to a degree, but not as well as someone like Akshar Patel. So I think he was super impressive for me. Jack Leach has been much improved. And I think England will persist with him, but he's still, and clearly the stats don't lie in this sense. It shows that he is still a level below your Ashwins. I mean, Ashwin is probably the best spinner in the world, but Akshar Patel just come in and played a couple of test matches and he just looks like the best bowler in the world, which is, it tells you one of two things. One, he's a very, very good talent, which I can get on board. But two, he just utilized the pitches and he's clearly grown up. I mean, Ahmedabad's his home ground as well, and he knows how to bowl on these tracks. And Jack Leach and Dom Best didn't adapt well enough, I don't think, to it. That was the biggest thing for me. Vivek, though, talking of Jack Leach, I mean, how impressive was he? Because I thought he was pretty good, and he's much improved as well.
I think over the course of the series, he's actually been really good. Because I think we've had a sort of nice, good look at how he bowls, having played all the 4 test matches. And I think he did use the conditions quite well. When the pitch was spinning as it did in the sort of second and third test, he did take a lot of wickets and sort of supporting Moeen Ali when he was in our side. And then afterwards, even in the 4th test, I think he did bowl well. But at the same time, I don't think he got the support he needed from Dom Best from the other end. Joe Root was having to bowl quite often, which sort of let all the pressure off and sort of made it harder for him to take wickets. So I don't think it's necessarily, I suppose, fair to blame him for not taking as many wickets. I think he's bowled well, but at the same time, looking at, for instance, Ashwin or Akshar Patel, I don't think he's really sort of got the same level of accuracy as they have, or maybe getting the same number of revs on the ball, same flights, same amount of variations, which is probably why, I suppose, one of the reasons why you see the variation between England's batting and also India's, not to say that it wasn't really poor, but at the same time, it looked as if they were playing on two different pitches at one point. Whereas England's sort of top order batsmen were out for like 40 runs. India's lower order batsmen were scoring 50s and 100s. And I think that's when it sort of really becomes apparent that we weren't utilising the pitch as well as we can, especially where our spinners were concerned, and being so heavily reliant on Anderson and on Stokes, you know, quick bowlers bowling on a flat subcontinent wicket. Not flat, but, you know, not friendly for seamers as you might get in England.
Yeah, I agree, Vivek, 100%. And we've actually got an interesting question here from So Dark says that Dan Lawrence made me believe that England can level the scores. I'm glad he got his 50. And Dan Lawrence is an interesting one because I guess he's after scoring that 50, that's one of the small, I would say, that's definitely one of the small positives for England, for sure. And for me, he still, you know, would he get into the side if everyone's fit and everyone's firing? Potentially now he would. If you're looking at home conditions, it's going to be interesting. There's probably going to be a shootout between him and Pope, I would imagine, when Butler comes back. But he still looks like a very good talent. He clearly, you know, he bats, I think, higher up for Essex in the longer format, but that's just because it's a longer format. How well did you play, do you think, Cash, today? Because I think he was clearly a standout. I mean, he was the only one to get 50 plus. Everyone else, apart from Root, got an okay 30. But he's the only one that kind of looked, well, comfortable to any degree, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think I mean, I don't know if he maybe came in and the ball wasn't doing as much. You know, what was he in at, what, 7 or 8? So, you know, there's that to consider. You know, he's being protected a little bit down there. And in a weird way, he didn't have anything to lose. Because if he did poorly, you know, everyone did poorly, so it didn't really matter. But he just played, you know, he played well. He played well enough with the lower order. Had he been higher up in the order, I don't know. It's hard to say, isn't it? Because the mentality is so different. You know, people were talking about specifically this test, the devils in the pitch, but the devils weren't really there, right? The demon wasn't there. It was all in the heads, right? And maybe Dan Lawrence, he didn't have those demons because it wasn't really that important for him, you know. Not that it wasn't important, but it wasn't. You know,
it wasn't a test-saving career. It wasn't a test-saving knock, was it?
No.
Like a career-saving knock, even. Whereas Jonny Bairstow, which that leads me really nicely onto Jonny Bairstow. Cash, I want to get your opinion as well, but Vivek, because I think Vivek's ready to burst about Jonny Bairstow, and I've seen so many people say this, and I'm pretty sure. I don't know if we're going to see Jonny Bairstow in whites again. Yeah, he played quite well in Sri Lanka, but he came back here for the India tour and just played shockingly badly. I think England made a mistake potentially sending him home after he played well. It would have been interesting to see whether if they'd asked him to stay, would he have stayed? But again, it's a bit unfair. But at that time, it's different because it's not like the Moeen Ali situation where they lost or they were losing. In that situation, they'd won in Sri Lanka. And it's like, do you want to actually continue on tour, for the India tour? So maybe they could have done that. They clearly didn't. They needed him. And they thought, oh, actually, we need to bring him back in. He's so important. And then realize, actually, no, he's probably not a test player still. And they keep going back to him. And he has flashes of fantastic ability. Well, flashes of brilliance, but that's kind of in and amongst a pile of rubbish amongst it. So, Vivek, what do you think? Oh, you unmute yourself, Vivek.
Okay, cool. I thought only you could unmute me, but sorry. So Jonny Bairstow, yeah, I really do agree. Like, he's played really badly. He's got 3 ducks in 4 innings now, hasn't he? And so he's not actually really added anything by being in the team because he doesn't keep wicket anymore. He definitely doesn't bowl. I've not seen him take many catches or moments of brilliance in the field or anything like that. So I think he's definitely under pressure, but he's quite lucky in that he's playing in a team where everyone is consistently underperforming anyway. And so if we
What
sort
I'm
of look
hearing
at
is
it,
you're saying that the whole of the England team is crap, basically, and he's just as crap as Bairstow, so he's getting away with it. Is that what you're saying?
exactly, because I mean, if I suppose you could say if he's being scrutinised, then so should all the people above him, because everyone's gotten out really cheaply this match. We were like 4 wickets for 30 runs in 2 innings. Also, if we sort of, I suppose, if we just look at the people who've been performing really well for England in the series, there's probably only like 4 or 5 of them, and that was really enough to win the first Test match. And then, unfortunately, they haven't turned up as much as they had done in the recent past, which is why we've lost so badly in the last sort of 3 Test matches. So it's I suppose it kind of reminds me of when the last Ashes series, or the one before that, when we lost 5-0 in Australia, and we were like 80 for 7 in every single one of the Test matches, almost in every single one of the innings, and it kind of feels a bit deja vu. And I'm not sure you can really single out Jonny Bairstow for, you know, the bad performance. I think it's sort of collective responsibility which might save him.
That's a good point, but he was the only one to get a duck. That's what I'm
True.
But no, what I'll say is, Cash, and I'll chuck it to you, is that I get what Vivek's saying. The only thing I'd say is that everyone else kind of has either performed well enough in periods, or the average is there. But with Jonny Bairstow, he's played. I think you said he's played over like 70 tests, and he's been in and out constantly, and he's almost seen as like a short-term fix. But surely it's time to look to someone else now going forward.
I mean, I agree. I think what's going to be interesting is the next tests are going to be the New Zealand tests, the 2 before basically for New Zealand to get practice before the championship final, and that's overlapping with the IPL. So, and England have said if IPL players are still playing, so Butler, Stokes, Jofra, if their teams get to the finals, then they can stay in the IPL. Yeah. And I think possibly a similar thing might happen with New Zealand. I'm not sure, but you could see that happening. But what that does is that opens up, particularly if Stokes and Butler are away, is that opens up the batting lineup. And then what happens is the batting lineup becomes a shootout. You put in everyone. That's what I would do. I would put in Sibley, Burns, Crawley,
and Lawrence and Pope get into there,
and Lawrence.
Yeah.
I put them all in. Maybe Root in the middle.
Folks as well, potentially.
Folks as well, yeah, because you need your thing. I'd probably put them all in. The one I wouldn't put in is Bairstow, actually, Vivek, and I wouldn't put him in because he's had his chance. That's my opinion.
He hasn't just had one chance; he's had like 10 chances.
Yeah, like since 2018, this has been a saga, right? And the problem is, it's a bit, he lost the gloves to Butler, and that says something, right? Because it says that you're not going to be the glove man, so you need to get in as a batsman. The only way you're going to get in as a batsman is in the top order, right? And he's just shown that he can't do it. That's my opinion. I agree with you that nobody else has necessarily shown that they can do it. But then it is India, it is away. A lot of them are inexperienced. He's not. He's been to India. He was actually there because his average against Ashwin is really good. And he kept on getting done by Axar. So it was just, that's my opinion on that. Really.
Yeah, I mean, his record's so good against Ashwin that he got out to him for a duck, first ball duck today. So I think that kind of says it all. So if he's in there for Ashwin, I mean, that's what I mean, right? It's just, you can't pick players based on that. And to be honest with you, if you want to pick someone they could have picked Keaton Jennings. I mean, he scored a fantastic 100 in India last time. They should have just picked him then. And that's what, or Moeen Ali hit 100 at Chennai, right? The last time England toured India. So why don't they put Moeen at 3? And again, like, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying that by that logic, that's kind of what they could have gone with.
If I can just jump in, it's interesting with the logic of the way that they've done Bairstow. Will they do it with Moeen? So, for instance,
No, they won't.
well, no, but just hear me out. They should, is what I'm saying, because basically Moeen has lost basically the frontline spinner to Leach, right? The same way that Bairstow lost the gloves to Butler. So Moeen should get the chance to prove himself in the top order. Why does Bairstow get the chance but Moeen doesn't? We know why, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, we could do an hour special on this, couldn't we? I think. Yeah, and I get what you're saying, and it's funny. I think someone I forwarded a message, didn't I? And someone said, "Look, England's batting frailties have clearly come to the fore here, in terms of playing spin, especially. Moeen Ali, in the one knock that he had, hit a pretty decent score or total in that second innings, didn't he? Was a 40-odd counter-attacking knock and showed that actually you can play spin in an attacking manner, which Stokes has shown as well as a lefty, and the intent was there. So, look, I mean, we know that he's a top-order batsman for his county, Worcestershire. He's kind of been shunting up and down. It'll be interesting to see, because the reason why I say it as well is at the moment, England's batting lineup look kind of set in stone or very solid after the Sri Lanka tour. Now it's looking like actually there's a lot of holes and gaps and frailties in there. And all of a sudden it's turned on its head after these 4 tests. So there's definitely going to be question marks around it. And maybe we'll touch on that in a bit. But I feel like maybe we need to give a little bit of credit here to India just for this test match. And then we can maybe talk about the series as a whole. I mean, Rohit Sharma was fantastic. I mean, for that 49. But Rishabh Pant, I mean, I think it goes without saying, him and also Washington Sundar batted fantastically well. And he was stranded on 96 today and will feel very, very unlucky because India's batting lineup kind of went like, here we go, we've got 9 players who can bat, who can get you a 50, and the 10 and 11 who will get you maybe 5 maximum. And that's kind of what happened because as soon as Axar Patel got run out, Ishant Sharma and Mohammad Siraj both got out for ducks and he was left stranded on 96. So I felt pretty bad for him. But I mean, he looked so good. And, you know, I heard someone saying, I think we talked about it before, that one of the subscribers said, could, you know, something like what happened to Steve Smith happen eventually to Sundar, who eventually could end up being a batsman rather than a bowler who bats a bit. But putting that to one side, I mean, he just batted phenomenally. I thought he was phenomenal. He some of the shots he played were just incredible, and I did feel sorry for him. But the knock he played was probably worth 100. Vivek, how good was that knock? And from an England point of view, I mean, he just didn't look like he was going to get out.
It was a really good knock, actually. I think that's what sort of put us out of the game, him and Rishabh Pant's knock. And actually on Washington Sundar, I think he actually was or is an opening batsman for his county, or used to be. So that probably just means he's got, you know, that exposure to batting at a reasonably high level, which he looks like he's going to be able to translate into the international stage as well. I sort of really like the way in which he accelerated at the start of the day. So yesterday he was playing quite carefully and quite watchfully, and today he and Axar, once Rishabh Pant was out at the end of yesterday, he and Axar Patel just put the foot on the accelerator and really took the game away from England, and you know, took the lead up to 160. I mean, it was a shame he didn't get his 100, but at the same time, it was more than enough, I'd say, to get England at a second time, as we saw. So yeah, really, really good knock from him. And I suppose this just shows the strength and depth that India have at the moment. You've got Washington Sundar, he can be a batsman if you want, but a bowler if you want as well. Axar Patel bats, Ashwin bats, he scored 100 last test match. And yeah, Ishant Sharma, when he's playing, can hang around. And so it's looking really quite bright for India as they go to the final, I think, with New Zealand, and, you know, at some point in the future. Don't know the exact date.
I think it's 14th of July or something. But yeah, they're 100%. That they're looking fantastic. And it's funny because you said, I think it was Kash, you said that clearly New Zealand are going to be using England as practice for that Test Championship, which is kind of very it's quite funny actually in a way, because the Test series being used as practice, you wouldn't have normally have thought of that in the past. You might have warm-up matches before a T20 World Cup. You play a couple of T20s, but Test match warm-up is kind of what England will be used as. So Tark says 3-1 is still better than 4-0. India had returned from the Gabba victory. The first loss just made them come back to reality. So Kash, I'm going to ask you a little bit on this. And I guess, was it a case then, do you think, that I think India did play pretty well in the first Test match, and also I think the pitch was probably a little bit more favourable for their type of style of play, I would say. But in saying that, I think India they just took their eye off the ball a little bit, and after the euphoria and being at the kind of the top of the mountain, winning the way they did, they came back with a stronger team at home. But do you think there was a little bit of complacency there potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, people are saying maybe a bit of a hangover, like the Gabba win was so big. I think we kind of forgotten that, like how momentous that was. So there was definitely a hangover. Kohli taking back the reins. There was question marks around, Rahane was so good as a captain, this, that, and the other, and it just seemed like they didn't have the intensity in the field. I think Kohli even alluded to that in the post-match or post-series interview. And obviously they didn't get their, well, I wouldn't say team selection, because I don't think maybe they had the options, but Nadeem debuted and Sundar was playing, and neither of them really were particularly that good on that day, in that game. So I seem to remember Roots, and really targeting them, and that really changed the dynamics of trying to build the ability to build any pressure on what was a much more challenging pitch for spinners. So you definitely saw that in that first Test, and then as you said, they changed the pitches. That's a different question, but that first Test was obviously in their minds when those pitches were developed for the second and third Tests.
Yeah, I agree. I think India, obviously, they realised the mistakes, but also maybe in selection, Nadeem obviously didn't perform too well, and they'll probably be thinking, we should have picked Axar in the first Test match, and there was a little bit of raised eyebrows as to why he didn't get picked, I think, in the first one as well, and he came back and performed really, really well, I thought. Clearly, given how I've seen, people saying that England are going to have nightmares about Axar Patel, and they probably will. And it's funny because he might not even play for India if they play away, because it might just be Ashwin. So, but he's just had that type of impact on the series. But yeah, I mean, so Tarkin makes a good point. 3-1 is still better than 4-0. Vivek, in terms of the whole series, though, as an England fan, do you take this as you were kind of expecting this? Do you think England underperformed or overperformed, or is it about kind of your expectations?
I think they definitely underperformed. If I sort of cast my mind back a few years when I think Alistair Cook was the captain, I think we actually went to India and won 2-1. And he had to play on spinning pitches. It was spinning as much as it was, this series, possibly not as much as the third Test, but it was still spinning quite a lot. And I think that kind of showed what you can do if you do apply yourself to the conditions and adapt. And I think we didn't do that as nearly as well as, we should have. And I think after this, we're going to have to look at our sort of team selection quite closely, because clearly a lot of people in our team are performing at this point in time, especially our batsmen. And I suppose we need to sort of think about what to do next. Either do we sort of continue backing the same horses, or do we try out some new players? And as you and Kashif were saying, look to the future. But I think as a whole, following on from winning against Sri Lanka, I think this was a bit of a sort of come down back to reality for England, and an indication of how far behind they are compared to India, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a little bit of euphoria around the England team after Root's ridiculous form, and it's interesting because Root he's had this incredible form that's come about. But if you look at at the Sri Lanka series and the India series, the other batsmen around him didn't really perform. Not consistently enough anyway. Stokes obviously had a couple of knocks in the India series that's just gone. Sibley's had a couple, but really apart from that, no one else has done much. And that's pretty disappointing, I think. You can't rely on one player to do it. And as soon as he didn't score runs, they've struggled like incredibly, and that's shown, I think. And you can't win games batting, and I mean, they got bowled out for what? They got bowled out for 205 and 135, and this is a track that India scored 365. You can't get bowled for those scores and expect to be competitive in a Test match, and then it's no surprise you're going to get destroyed by an innings and 25 runs. It is what it is, right? It's one of those things that you've got to look at, and it's really, really disappointing, I think, for sure. But going on to India, I guess then. Ashwin was the man of the match. Rishabh Pant was the man of the match, but man of the series was Ashwin, Kash. How good has he been in the series? You touched on him quite a bit. And look, as a character, he can be quite divisive, but I think as a player, I think it's pretty clear that he is the best test spinner around, one of the best all-rounders in the world as well. I mean, how good has he been in his test series, and how important is he for India? Because he seems to be one of the first names on the team sheet.
Yeah, I think he must be. He is, he is going to be useful in pretty much any conditions. Like he's even in like in English, English conditions, he'll be on the team sheet, and not just because of his wickets, but because of his runs he's now getting as well, right? I think that's why he pipped it ahead of Akshar for the man of the series, because there was a strong argument for having Akshar. I think, considering young kid, well, not young, but debut, and then obviously he only played 3 games as opposed to 4. But Ashwin made runs, and that was a big thing. And like, I think there was some interesting stats that came out of it. So he got the man of the series. This is 8th man of the series. I'm going to be like Venu now, which is that's the 3rd highest, joint 3rd highest. I think only Kallis and Muralitharan have got more. So he's joined with people like Shane Warne. And then you've also got the fact that he's 5th now, I believe, in 5-wicket hauls. I think he's gone ahead of even Anderson.
Yeah,
and he's
went
played a
past
lot less.
400 wickets, didn't he? He went past 400 wickets as well, didn't he? I think he did.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Actually,
he went past 400 test wickets.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, test wickets. Yeah. And so Tark says Ashwin got his century at a crucial point with 30+ wickets. So yeah, kind of adding to what you said, Kash. But yeah, sorry, Kash, carry on.
No, that was pretty much what I was pretty much going to say. Like, yeah, as you said, like, apparently, he's a divisive character, this, that, and the other. But look, he does the job, and he can bat, and he's your best spinner in the world probably for Test.
Yeah, he is. No, he is. I think there's no doubt about it. To honestly, I think before when Nathan Lyon was in fantastic form, there's an argument, but he's fallen away a little bit to the wayside. And realistically, it doesn't matter if he's a divisive character because that's kind of by the by, and it's separate to how he's a cricketer. And I think it's very important to look at that. And a lot of the best players ever and the best players now are divisive to a degree anyway. You've got Steve Smith with all the stuff that's gone on with him beforehand. Kohli as well. Some people don't like the way his attitude is, but some people love him. Similar with Steve Smith, similar with Ashwin. And I just think, it doesn't matter their character. You've got to look at it maybe in Venu tinted glasses and look at it from a stats point of view, but also performance based and scenario based. And so Tark made a good point here about the century he got was at a crucial point in the series. It was a really vital century that he hit. And I think it definitely helped. I mean, it was a match-winning knock. It really was. And to get, the 30+ wickets that Sartark's talking about is just, or 30 wickets, I think it was, is just incredible. And he's clearly just carried on the type of form and type of importance. There's 32 wickets, even, that he got, which is just unbelievable to get 32 wickets in this series. So I think we said that he might get, I think you said, Kash, he'll get to his 400th wicket. He'll definitely get to it. And he got beyond that. So I think he exceeded people's expectations about how well he'd bowl. And India just didn't seem to be able to play him at all and really just spin at all. And that leads me quite nicely onto England's deficiency with spin, Vivek. I mean, what do they need to do, first of all? And second of all, like, this seems to be a huge issue.
What do they need to do? Well, first of all, they can start by pitching the ball rather than giving away 50 million full tosses.
No, not English spinners, as in England's batsmen. What do England's
Oh,
batsmen
you mean
need to spin? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think I was just getting started with that. But in terms of the batsmen, I suppose maybe just looking at the techniques of how to play spin, maybe looking at how the Indians played spin, because they played it much better than we did. Our spinners weren't nearly as effective, against their batsmen as their spinners were against ours. And I suppose things like, getting to the pitch of the ball, like maybe playing sweeps a bit more properly, playing straight rather than, across the line and stuff like that. Just general sort of things, just getting back to basics a bit with spin. But also, I suppose, then sort of applying it in practice, because I think the only way they're going to get better is by playing more and more spin against good spin bowlers. And I suppose the one thing to say is that the England team is still, I guess, reasonably inexperienced in a lot of places. I think Tom Sibley, Crawley, all the sort of batsmen, maybe up until Joe Root, are quite new to Test cricket, and they played primarily in sort of English conditions.
I mean, none of them
played. Yeah,
you make a really good point. Sibley, Crawley, Burns, Pope, Dan Lawrence, none of them have played in India yet.
And also, they probably haven't even played in the IPL yet, so they've not come across anyone bowling spin into like a real dust bowl. So I think the one positive you can say is that there's a lot of room for improvement, and so you're going to expect them to be much better the next time they come to India. So I think it's going to be a gradual process, but I guess it's just doing the sort of basics and getting more practice against spin that's really going to help.
Yeah, I think it's definitely they weren't expecting the pitcher to turn like this, I think, and maybe a bit of naivety here, but I think it's an experience that they'll improve from. So I'll get to this question in a bit. Horace says that Dan Lawrence should get a chance. He's shown something. That's a good point. I think he will get a chance, if especially some of the England players on IPL duty potentially. I think he'll definitely be in and around the squad. But this kind of leads me quite nicely on to whether, if you're picking your England team and you have to choose between Pope and Lawrence, Kash, who are you picking?
It's a toughie. The problem is in English conditions, a lot of these players will perform very differently. And that's always the problem with England, is that they develop their game to the seaming ball, which they obviously do very well. That's the only way you're going to get into the team. And then, once you go abroad, you just get spanked, and you just, well, that's that. and then you come back and you're like, well, I can do it. So I could imagine Pope, he'll make some runs. This is the problem with that's going to be this summer, actually, partly, is it's going to be, some players are going to reestablish themselves, but they're not going to be any good away still. Do you know what I mean? I do.
And it's not like bowlers, right, where you can kind of chop and change. I feel like with batsmen, you want to have a pretty solid core of batsmen, and that's the issue. And especially openers, and I think we touched upon it before, like, you can't have different openers in different conditions. Like, you have to have the same pair. And then similarly with your batsmen, for the most part, even your middle order, like, you don't really want to be chopping and changing it loads. With bowlers, you can afford to do it, but with batsmen, you can't, because you want to be a unit. So I feel like it's really difficult.
I mean, that's how it felt with Crawley. That they just put him in because Burns was doing so poorly, right? In opening, when in fact it seemed like Crawley had, he'd had a really good summer playing at number 3, and it seemed like, oh, finally England's got number 3, and then things go badly and they have to switch it around. Lawrence goes in 3, Bairstow goes in 3, and you're pretty confused, right? So I'm quite confused. Why didn't why did Lawrence go in 3 and not Pope, who has more experience? I'm not saying he's going to do any better, but surely you give it to the person who's got a little bit more experience to take the hit, shall we say, to take that heat. So it seems a bit weird, the management around Pope. I don't know if they're protecting him or they really just think he's a number 6 waiting to become a number 5 or 4.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one though, because you make such a good point, and I think and so Tark, I will get to your comment about in England's backyard, because that will lead on quite nicely after this. But Crawley obviously had a fantastic summer at 3. Then England, as you said, to fill out, they kind of did a Moinali on him, which not as badly, but they just said to him, well, okay, you batted really well at 3, you've clearly batted really well, but instead of putting you at 3, where you have been batting, I know that he does open for Kent, I know that he does, but the point is, in the international stage, he's been batting at 3 and he's been performing well. They just said, well, Burns. First of all, Burns didn't even play in Sri Lanka, so he came to India. He had what was it? 2 Test matches, wasn't it? And then he didn't perform well. To be honest with you, I think that's a bit harsh to drop him after 2 Test matches. And I know it's different. It's because it was 1-1, but it was 1-1. And I'm just thinking, why not just say, you know what, we'll keep Burns in, put Crawley at 3, but instead they said to Crawley, go back and open. And after he'd just been out injured as well, and that's a really hard thing to do. And I know he scored a 150, which is really impressive, but I just don't know what England are doing with him. Do they want him to open, or do they want him to be a bat at 3 long term? And it's not like the middle order where you can just say like Dan Lawrence, you can start at 6 and then move him up. You got to be pretty decisive and have a hard line and say, we want him to be our 3 or open. You can't just say to him, you're a stopgap opening, and then we'll drop you down when we find an opener. Like they have, it's very unfair on Crawley, and it's also will completely ruin the lineup dynamic. So, like Vivek, what do you think? What should they do? Like, where should Crawley bat? Because I feel like where Crawley bats will determine where England need to kind of fill that gap. And if they don't look at Burns as being a long-term option now, and they're thinking actually he's maybe not for us, then they need to either look there, or if he's going to open, Bairstow I don't think is long-term. So again, they need to look at a 3, and they're back to where they were before, where they were struggling with 3, and then Crawley filled it. So either way, they're in a bit of a catch-22. But I guess it more comes down to where does Crawley bat best. So what do you think of that?
Well, I suppose just looking at sort of English conditions, because that's where Crawley's batted most. He usually opens, and that's where he got his 260 against the West Indies over the summer as well. So he seems to be performing.
Was that 3, wasn't it?
Sorry, was that 3?
Yeah. Because
okay, sorry.
So he batted at 3 in the summer. So he opens for Kent in the domestics circuit, but then he batted at 3 for England because it had Burns and Sibley. But then he opened in Sri Lanka and India because Burns wasn't on the Sri Lanka tour, and then he was injured, and then they dropped him. Burns.
I guess maybe because he's only played not that many Test matches. Maybe they're trying him out of different positions to see where he kind of fits best, and then sort of kind of mold him around the team a bit. Because I guess the good thing is, because when he was at 3, he scored that 260 against the West Indies. You know that he's got the ability to play there, which is like a plus point. So then if, I don't know, Burns does come off and, plays really well and consistently at some point, you can put him as the opener, and you know that Crawley can do reasonably well at number 3. So I guess what they might be trying to do is just to see, have we got that sort of flexibility to play him at different positions? But I do agree with you that they need to make up their minds reasonably soon, because otherwise it's going to sort of ruin his own Test career and impact his ability to be chosen in future, especially if he does really badly in all the 10 different positions they're going to play him in the next 10 matches. And so I think they, not just with Crawley, but also everyone else. So as you say, Lawrence, they need to decide whether they want him at the top of the order or at the bottom, just before Folkes, and just get I suppose come to a landing on the team at some point soon, sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
I suppose the difficult thing is that they're unsure about the team now, so that adds even more uncertainty.
Yeah, 100%. I think they're uncertain 100%. And I think there's an issue here because, as you said, Vivek, like Crawley, he's early in his Test career as well. So do you really want to be in a position where you're messing him about when he's just called a 267? And I'm glad you said against West Indies because it was actually against Pakistan, but I put it to the back of my mind and it really hurt me that 267. But yeah, Kash, what are you going to say?
I was just going to interject really and just say, like, I think you were saying, Fazan, I think it was quite unfair to Burns, and I say that having watched quite a bit of Burns and Sibley, and I felt like they were struggling in terribly difficult conditions for them, for their style of cricket. But I felt like they were close to developing a partnership, and I felt like they were trying to really work off each other's game. And I think that that's really important for your opening partnership, that they know each other's game and that they can kind of complement it. And I just felt like when Crawley come in, that wasn't there at all. Like, and that's not either their fault. That's just the fact that they haven't, they haven't batted together for a long period, and it just didn't feel. It didn't feel like they were trying to stick it in together.
They weren't cohesive, were they? They really weren't. They weren't at all. They didn't look like they gelled, and I think that's because you can tell that he's just been plugged in there, but he's not quite part of the team. And then Bairstow's kind of been plugged in there as well, or Dan Lawrence been plugged in there. So it's not really a kind of a team. We've got Ashford as well, and yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's just a case of England's batting lineup is just completely screwed up, and they need to figure it out. I would say potentially you put him at 3 because he's performed well there. Maybe when he's had 4 or 5 years and he's performing well at 3, you can say maybe you can put him up to open. But either way, they just need to make a decision with Crawley, and then they know, okay, we need to find an opener, we need to find a 3. Because if they're not going to go with Burns or Bairstow, Bairstow, I think just put him to one side. He's like in whites, he's done. And I think Usher's smiling, but we talked about how he's probably had about 50 million chances and more than anyone else. And I think it's game over for him. But with Burns, it's a bit different, I think, for sure. Let's lead on to the last few comments here as well. So Tark says, looking forward to the 5 tests in England's backyard. I want to see Jofra and Bumrah knocking over some stumps. And yeah, and Anderson as well, man. And that's going to be actually, I was going to go really into India's batting lineup and ask you guys about how well you think they do in England, but I think maybe we can leave that to nearer the time. What we can talk about is Shubman Gill obviously hasn't been in the finest form, but Rohit Sharma, we can talk about him. And Asjad, you're a massive Rohit Sharma fan, I know, so I'm going to let you, wax gospel about Rohit Sharma and how good he's been this series. He was, I think, he's the second highest run scorer, 345 runs, that 30 odd from Joe Root, elevating him to top run scorer. Even though I went with Ben, so who went with Joe Root? Was it? It might be Venu actually. I think it said Joe Root. So he's not here, but I'll give him the honorary position of getting it right. And I got it completely wrong. Joe Root finished on 368, an average of 46. That double ton, let's be honest, really helping him with that one. And Rohit Sharma 345, an average of 58, and Rishabh Pant at 3rd. But yeah, Asjad, how good has Rohit Sharma been in this series? And can we see him now be a real permanent fixture in this Indian lineup and perform not just in India, where we know he's been fantastic, but around the world as well now?
Hello. First of all, hello everyone. Thank you for having me on, Fazan. Really appreciate it. And I think what Rohit Sharma has done this series, he's actually shown everyone why he was so good when they were playing at home early last year and before that. And he's developed into that opening position in Test cricket. And as you said, right now he's just there in home Test series, but away they're not going to go with anyone else. Like, we saw the skills, we've seen the averages, we've seen everything. Shubman Gill is going to be there once they tour England, and so is Rohit Sharma. The thing with Rohit Sharma is what he's done in this series. He's shown everyone that he can play it slow when need be, when he can kind of stabilize the ship in a way, and also go full on attacking. Like, what was it? I can't remember which innings this was, but he made a 50 in like 50 balls or something like that. And I was like, dude, what's he doing? And then yesterday, or was it day? All the days have merged into one, but basically when India batted, right?
One of the 3 days. That's what you have to know.
Yeah, right. One of the 3 days. He scored 49 of 140 deliveries. Yeah. I think we talked about this. He was batting slowly at the end of day one, and he kept continuing that because he realized Pujara went, Kohli went, Rahane went. So he had to kind of bat slow. He does have that game. The only reason he got out yesterday was because of an absolute piece from Ben Stokes, right? Otherwise, he probably would have stayed there and got a 50. So he has to be in there. He has to be up there as an opener. One thing I just want to mention, that second opening position, you mentioned Shubman Gill didn't have the best series. He didn't, right? But the thing is, we don't see the same way that, you know, Pakistan handles their team. India doesn't do that. A couple of series you don't do well, or you don't do well in a format series, you get dropped. I think they're going to stick with Shubman Gill at least.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to quickly interject. That's a bit unfair because they dropped Prithvi Shaw after only a couple of matches because they were losing.
No, they dropped Prithvi Shaw because he was in terrible form beforehand as well.
But how many matches did he played though? He hadn't played that many.
No, he'd played when he played, right? The test matches initially, he played quite well. And then he kind of went into a slump. And then in Australia, he looked completely out of it. Even before then, yes, we have Ravi Shastri's statement, right? Which is like, he reminds me of Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, all merged into one, right? Okay. But no offense to Ravi Shastri, he says stuff that doesn't a lot of the time make sense nowadays, especially when he's the coach, right? So all I'm trying to say is Prithvi Shaw was dropped because he was in bad form, because he hadn't played well. If you looked at the entire IPL, you saw Shubman Gill performing, yes, different format, everything, but that kind of gives you an idea of where their form is. So Shubman Gill scored, I think, 400, 500 runs. And Prithvi Shaw, he played more than half the matches in the IPL and had one good innings, hardly. I can't even remember exactly, but he didn't have a good IPL. So I think they thought Prithvi Shaw would be their first choice. And when they went into Australia, they realized, yeah, he's not up to the mark. He didn't do particularly well in the, the tour games or any other matches they played. So Shubman Gill was probably the right choice. So yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is they're going to stick with Shubman Gill and they're going to stick with Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma's home record as an opener is now fantastic. It was great. Now it's fantastic, right, after this series. But he just needs to replicate that in conditions that aren't favoring the Indian batsman, you know? And that's what I think you were kind of leading to. So there's no way they're going to change their opener. At least Rohit Sharma is not leaving the side anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember you saying actually before that potentially... you sorry?
Nothing.
You said about Mayank Agarwal. Yeah, you said that you should be Mayank Agarwal and Shubman Gill. But yeah, I think obviously he's proven it. This is interesting. So Tark says Shaw had bad form in the IPL and yet he got one chance in the first test in Australia. Yeah, but the one thing I'd say, and I think I should very briefly touch upon this, is that, and I know you guys love the IPL in India, and I love the PSL in Pakistan, but they're completely different. They're completely different formats. And like you can see that Kane Williamson isn't an unbelievable T20 player, but he's an unbelievable test player. So it kind of has no bearing for me. Yeah, of course, scoring runs in it is a plus, but that doesn't really translate totally for me. If you play all three formats and maybe it can have a slight effect, but that wouldn't be for me the be all and end all personally anyway. But I can see why people will talk about that as well. Cryptic says here, Assalamu alaikum, I'm back. England's batting is disgraceful. Kash, what are you going to say? You're on mute, Kash. You're on mute.
Sorry, my bad. I was just interjecting and just talking about Shaw, because I think I said this before. He was dropped because India were losing. Like, okay, his form wasn't great, but he's only played 5 tests. So it's not like, and his average is 54. So it's, he's got 100, he's got 250s. It's not, do you know what I mean? He got dropped because
there's one bad test match, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe one before that.
I think they basically looked at him and thought he's easy pickings for the style of batting that he's playing.
And it's because they got humiliated. That's why.
Yeah. Whereas if England was winning, and Gill was playing as he's playing, Gill would have been dropped. Like
I think he would have as well.
I don't think they'd drop him. I don't think they would have dropped him.
I thought they would have been Mayank Agarwal, no?
That's an interesting point because I know we talked about this, but I don't think they would have taken Shubman Gill out of the side. He's going to get this entire series. I know what you're talking about, Kash. That, but there's the funny thing, as you said, that you shouldn't put a lot of bearings on IPL or T20 or anything like that. Kane Williamson's a perfect example, but Kane Williamson is great in the IPL, right? So I wouldn't use that example, but I get what you're saying. I think the reason why they put so much emphasis on IPL and things like that, it's because if you're in bad form in the T20 format, then translating that into Test wouldn't be the best. Like if he's not in great form, it's not going to give him any boost. On top of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kash, I think most of those matches that Prithvi Shaw did play were at home, weren't they? The ones that he did well in, and away he didn't do that well.
I think it was West Indies. Were they touring India?
Whilst we're looking out there, that's I think, and I'm talking about, obviously, he would have been dropped, Shubman Gill, but to be honest with you, I'm not trying to say that he should be dropped. I think they should stick with him. Similarly, maybe pretty sure they could have, but maybe because they were away and there's a lot of pressure on them, they got destroyed. I just think I'm just trying to draw the comparison and try and see where the difference is there. And I think them winning or losing does play a part in it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I just think obviously situationally, or the scenario definitely plays a part.
Of course, yeah.
So it was West Indies at home, so in India, and he was top run scorer in I think it was 2 tests. And then he went to New Zealand and didn't do great. I think he got 150 in 4 innings, which is, it is what it is. What I would say is, I think they should take him to England, what I will say is maybe not him, but they will need some options, because I see there being. I don't know. Will they take Rahul? Where would they play Rahul, for instance?
He's middle order, though, no? I don't think he'll open the test. I could be wrong.
He won't open in the tests. If he plays, I don't think he's going to open. But that's a very good point, Kash, because Prithvi Shaw just is having a fairly decent domestic 50-over tournament right now. He scored a couple of hundreds, I think. So maybe if he gets back into Nick, they might actually look at that as an option. But from the way I see it, Rohit Sharma is settled, right? Shubman Gill is kind of settled, but this series is kind of thrown a little spanner in the works. And they just need one more opener. But knowing India, if they get injured like they did in Australia, they'd play their 3rd opener and then he'll get 100 or something, right?
Yeah.
But definitely I think these two go. And then Mayank goes as an opener. I don't think they'll take Prithvi Shaw. But if he keeps going the way that he is, he might actually get back into the side. That actually makes sense.
Yeah. Cryptic says here, India don't have to drop players because, to be honest, India has a strong test team at the moment. They have a stacked middle order, so they can afford to keep a young player like Shubman, even if he averaged 10. Yeah, potentially. And Cryptic says, I think Pakistan have great chance of winning the World Cup, but they need to focus on red ball cricket. They need a new ODI middle order lineup. So basically, pretty much everything we need Pakistan. India are India. I've got a fantastic. They've got fantastic strength and depth, I think. And
if I could just, can I interject?
Yeah, go on.
Because the problem is that actually the middle order didn't do very well. If you look at the averages,
it was Pujara, Kohli, and Rahane.
Yeah, they didn't do well. So Kohli was averaging 28, Pujara was averaging 22, and Rahane was averaging 18. That's not great. They were being bailed out by Rohit and by the lower order, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, I agree. Rishabh Pant, right? I mean, he's been phenomenal in Australia and here. And then also Washington Sundar. Who else got runs? Shardul Thakur got vital runs in Australia as well.
Ashwin got 100.
Yeah, Jadeja as well. So all these guys have got runs. So I think that's definitely something to look at. But I guess maybe the issue is, well, not the issue, but the positive is that India have got batting up until about 8 or 9. So that's why they can afford to have people out of form, whereas a lot of teams can't do that, unfortunately. So, Pakistan, we could afford it in the South Africa series because for once our tail actually fired two out of 4 times, which, to be honest with you, is very good. But normally that doesn't happen. But we had that. And just, I guess, leading on from the Shaw point, Satak says, check the clip of Shaw's first ball in Australia. Ponting was commentating. Ponting made a comment about his gap between his bat and pad. Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching that and thinking that. He said that's where Cummins should target next ball he's bowled. So he had an issue. And to be fair, though, a lot. You know what, Sartak? And I'm going to level with you. So Shaw had this issue where Pat Cummins, because he seams the ball in a lot, right? So he would pitch the ball, seam in, and basically Shaw wasn't reading it properly, and he'd be reaching, he'd be in between bat and pad, which is obviously something that's clearly a technical flaw. However, Shubman Gill has something very similar, but it's not with the seaming ball; it's with a swinging ball. And 3 out of his however many dismissals he had in these Test matches were 3 of them were induckers to Anderson. 2 were LBW, 1 was clean through the gate, like between bat and pad. So Shubman Gill clearly has a similar flaw. Now, I'm not saying that he should be dropped. I'm not saying that he should be dropped. But what I am saying is that clearly he has a similar flaw as well. So I think it's probably a bit harsh to say that that's why he got dropped, because Shubman Gill's shown that. But again, I do think it's a case of, look, if you're winning, you're not going to look at your team and think we need to chop and change it. Why would they bother? They just think we've just destroyed a team 3-1 at home and we've beaten them by an innings in the last Test match. They're not thinking about Shubman Gill. They're not looking at where to improve in that sense. They're thinking we've just won this tournament. Fantastic. Let's go on. Let's hit the momentum. Stick to the team that we've got. So I think that definitely plays a part. So Tark says Ponting is the head coach for DC, and Shaw has a technique flaw which is exploiting the IPL. Yeah, so I mean, Shubman Gill's got a similar thing, but again, I think both of them are young, and they'll get over it pretty quickly. When they should anyway. Well, that's interesting. Crip says, how can India fit Prithvi and Sharma in the squad? They will leave Rohit. No, I mean, they won't leave Rohit Sharma out unless he averages 0 or 5 out of like the next 2 series, which I doubt will happen. So, yeah, they won't. The long term, that could be
He's
the
not
best.
Bairstow.
Yeah, he's not Bairstow. Well, he might be Bairstow. He might be in and out, shaking all about, but I doubt it.
I mean, his average away is not very good, right? His average at home is over 80. His average away is, I think, 30, somewhere about there, maybe even lower. So
late 20s, yeah.
That's why I say in English, in English conditions, when they play both the World Cup final, whatever it is, the World Test Championship final, and against England, we will watch that space, because those 2 openers, whoever they'll be, out of all the different options, are all going to be quite going to be vulnerable. Going to be really vulnerable, and that's why I think personally that the middle order, Kohli, Pujara, Rahane, is going to be really important in those conditions.
Agreed. I think that middle order, as you said, they haven't had a good season, a good series, or good previous series either, right? So yeah, I agree with that. I think Virat Kohli, even Rahane and Pujara, all 3 of them need to step up in some way, and in the next 4 months. 3 months, whenever, June, right? Next 3 months, you have the IPL. One of them will have to perform in that to get their confidence back. Because, and again, Fazan, I completely understand what you're saying. Mixing formats doesn't make complete sense, but there is some sort of confidence you get from performing in a franchise league that you can translate, and then obviously things kind of kick off, don't they? So Rishabh Pant, even if like the way he plays, it's absolutely amazing, right? So I think the all 3 of those will have one good match, and then they'll just click back into form. That's what great players do, man. That's the thing. Virat Kohli, dude hasn't got 100 in 36 like international games, and we're saying, oh, what's happening to him? But he's had a few 50s, right? And no one cares. No one cares. Virat Kohli's got 50. They're like, no, we only care about hundreds. So it's just the class.
The average is 50 plus. That's why. That's what comes with it. That's what comes with it. And he'll know that. And he will be his biggest critic, I'm sure, going forward. He'll pretend like he's not. He'll pretend like it's all fine, but deep down he knows that he wants runs, and he's hungry for it. And the best players have that attitude, I think. Vivek, looking then to wrap up the ODI and T20 series. I think it's It's 3 ODIs and 3 T20s, isn't it? 5 T20s,
isn't it?
Bloody hell, God. Anyway, this is a long tour. Anyway, on top of that, Vivek, what's the predictions for the ODI and T20s?
I think the ODIs and T20s are going to be a completely different ball game. You've got a different team, you've got a different captain, you've got a different mindset, slightly different mentality, I guess, even though we tended to give away our wickets this test series, and so maybe not so much, but I think it will be completely different. I think it will be much more competitive. It usually doesn't tend to spin as much in the ODIs and T20s. It tends to be more batsman friendly. And I think that's going to play a bit to England's advantage as well. They've got quite a number of big hitters and things like that. But at the same time, India have got a really good team now as well. So I think it's going to be a very sort of compelling 2020 and ODI series. So can't wait to see how that goes, pretty much.
So I've just heard you scut over the fence and not give me a prediction, Vivek.
So 2020s, I'd say 3-2 to England. And then ODIs, again, England winning by one match.
Okay, 2-1.
It's going to be close. It's going to be close.
Okay.
Asjad's going to scream at me.
I'm going to go England 2-1 in the ODIs and 3-2 to India in the T20s. Cryptic says, what happened to Shikhar Dhawan? Haven't heard of him for a long time. What will India do with the ODI team? Who will open? Shaw, Shubman, Rohit or Shikhar? Will Shubman just be a test batsman? I'll quickly answer this and go to you, Kash, as well. And Asjad, if you want to give a word on it. I think at the moment it's going to be Shubman Gill is a test batsman, but they're not going to change the ODI team when they've got Shikhar Dhawan and Rohit Sharma. Until Shikhar Dhawan retires, I think that's what will be the opening pair, unless one of them suddenly goes into ridiculously bad form. In the T20s, they have Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, isn't it? I think they open. So that's where they'll go with Shubman Gill again. Like, unless KL Rahul goes into bad form, there's no point even looking at Rohit Sharma. He's one of the best white ball openers, if not the best white ball opener around at the moment. So that's what I would say personally. Kash and Asjad, are you in agreement?
I think so. I think there was the thing in Australia with the T20s was Rohit, I think, was injured, was he not? So they had Dhawan open and he did really well. So there'll definitely be some questions around, because who do they play at number 3? Can't remember.
What, in the T20s?
In the T20s, yeah.
Is it Virat?
I think it's Virat Kohli, yeah.
Yeah.
And four they have. Pant was there before. Pant will be in the white ball side now. He'll come back into it, but it's not Pant. It was who was it actually?
Sanju Samson? No, he was lower down, wasn't
he?
No. He was like 5.
They had Pandya at 5 or 6.
Pandya and Jadeja.
Anyway, I don't know, but yeah, I've forgotten. I'm too test match orientated at the moment.
Oh, Shreyas Iyer.
Yeah.
So yeah, just on that point, I just want to say, Shikhar Dhawan performed really well when he played on Australia, right? So ideally, they don't look at Shikhar Dhawan as an away opener, but if he's done all right, that's India has a good problem of having a lot of people in decent form, decent touch, so they can pick and choose. But right now, I think ODI is probably Rohit Sharma and Shikhar Dhawan kind of makes sense, and T20s, as you said, Fazan, Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul. Just as a prediction, because I want to disagree with Vivek, right? I want to say India wins the T20s. I think India will win that probably 3-2 or 4-1. I'll go 4-1 because Fazan went 3-2, so I don't want to say the same thing as him. And in terms of the ODIs, that's going to be close. So I'm going to go 2-1 England as well.
So Tark says 3-2 T20 India wins, and Cryptic, Mr. Pakistan, what's going on, man? He goes 4-1 to India, 3-0 to India. No, let's hope they find a new groundsman. So England have a better chance. Well, they can't find the first groundsman, so they're going to have to put in a new one. Or maybe he can come and do an appearance and then run off again. But that's by the by. But yeah, no, that's a crack up. I think India will be confident after this. But England in the white ball, considering the World Cup champions, will be confident. And going forward to the T20 World Cup, that England will see this as a really good practice in India, right, as well, where India will be one of the favourites. Guys, anything you guys want to touch on before we wrap up here?
I just wanted to touch on the fact that it was on Channel 4. It was on free-to-air TV in England, in the UK. And to be honest, we didn't get a lot of cricket. I said it's probably one of the worst series to have on free-to-air. Yeah, like it was what we in effect only got about half of what we should have in terms of days. So it wasn't the best. Some of it was captivating, but in the sense that the Indians were so captivatingly brilliant, and it was captivatingly terrible from a English standpoint. But it wasn't the greatest advert for the game, in my opinion.
Well, not in the UK, right? Because it's like when Kash says free to air, he means free to air in the UK. So England just got completely demolished, and so these kids watching are probably thinking, we don't want to play cricket. We're going to go over to India. Like I don't want to play for England. Go over to India, get spun out, and then I just go home. And I'm struggling to hit the ball off the square because that's what it looks like. That's what India make it look like at the moment.
Match didn't even reach the weekend, so a lot of people at work, at school, and you're like, oh crap, it's done.
The pink ball test, people are like, yeah, this is a fantastic advert, and it lasts 2 days. So, I mean, it's just it is what it is, I think. But yeah, unfortunately, it was fantastic to see it on free to air, but probably not the best advert for English cricket, let's say. And England will be embarrassed, I think, by that. They'll definitely try and come back, and they'll be looking to one up or get back at India in the home series for sure. Ashwin and Vivek, anything you guys want to touch upon?
I just want to say India played great cricket, and there was nothing wrong with the pitch. The pitches were perfect.
Is this to appease all your Indian fans?
No. I just want to say I hope we get that new groundsman real soon.
Yeah. I think it was entertaining. Like I agree with Kash that it wasn't the greatest, advert for cricket, but it was very entertaining. Like I was not bored in this entire test series. So yeah, I thought the last 2 test series that India's had, they've all been really good. They've both been really good. And yes, I would have liked the 5 test match series, but at this rate, it would have been terrible. It would have been 15 days of cricket for 5 matches rather than 13 days for 4. So yeah, it was great. It was good fun, and hopefully England can show a bit more resilience in the white ball format because they're World Cup champions. They're really good. They beat everyone. So yeah, just a bit more. I don't know, ability. Bairstow maybe not playing potentially, but Bairstow's gonna play. Dude,
I know.
I'm just joking. Right?
I'm just being a Bairstow hater. Cryptic says the test series was a 3-minute movie trailer. And what will happen in ODI and T20 matches? Really? I don't think so, but we'll see. You could be right. But I tell you what, the pitch won't have as much effect in the ODIs and T20s. And just on the pitch situation, because I kind of partly agree with what Vivek says and partly what Asher says, and I want to be really clear about this, and that the pitch, I don't think in the second and third test match was acceptable for a test standard. However, that didn't have any bearing on what would have happened as a result, and we've seen that in this test match, right? That this pitch was fine, but India outplayed England. So the pitch kind of discussion is really irrelevant. And it's only relevant if you look at it and it's a close test match here, and you say, well, hold on, maybe that had a bearing, but no, it didn't. They just got out. I mean, completely and thoroughly outplayed. Yeah, it's a bit worrying that they can't find the groundsman, but that's kind of again a separate investigation scenario. But as a series, and the cricket played, the best team won, and I'm happy to say that. And that's that's the facts of it, isn't it? Let's be honest. And England clearly need to improve on how to play spin. And we didn't even touch on the spinners, but I think it's pretty obvious that England spinners, Dom Bess as well, needs to go probably back to England Lions, and Leach is improving, but England are kind of, their spinners need to improve, and Leach is doing it, but the chasm's there in ability. And on that note, as I'm coughing around everywhere, thank you very much, Asjad.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's not COVID. Well, I hope not anyway. Kash, Vivek, and Asjad, thank you very much, all 4 of you, for joining. Cryptic says, I'm sure Pakistan will win the T20 World Cup. Oh, man. I love it. Thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone joining as well, who was in the chat. And I will be doing another probably series review. This is more of an initial reaction. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Please like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help. Greatly appreciated. You all legends. Have a fantastic weekend. And I'll see you tomorrow, where I'll be doing the West Indies versus Sri Lanka. I'm going to try and stay up, as Kash knows. I know you fell asleep yesterday for that one. But yeah, thank you very much, guys.